So my question to you is, how would you feel if someone took away all of your rights?
Angry.
Angry, upset. Well, what if you didn't have the right to any food? Or what if you didn't have the right to go shopping? Or how about just have a friend? Or what if you didn't have the right to call someone, just to use a phone? Maybe you need to go to an appointment. Or what if you didn't have the right to a relationship? Like maybe you couldn't even get married. How would that make you feel?
Awful.
It'd be awful. Well,
Especially food. I'd probably die.
believe it or not, in 1950, disabled people had no rights whatsoever. In fact, they lived in these institutes that had beds that were literally crowded next to each other, hundreds of them in rooms, just filled with people, and they had, you know, linen that was saturated with urine and feces, and maybe they didn't even have blankets. And this is kind of what their daily life was like. They absolutely did absolutely nothing. They were just existing in our life. And this is one of the institutes. It was named Willowbrook, and they didn't have any programs for them. They didn't teach them anything. They just existed in life. And some of them were left in cradles, and they just lived in these cradles, and sometimes they were never held, never loved, never hugged. In fact, some of them stayed there for hours and upon days, and they didn't even get their diapers changed, if they had a diaper. And interesting enough, they had these inhumane treatments that they used to use on the disabled people. They would have things like lobotomy, which they went in and did brain surgery, thinking that they could take this part of your brain out to make you normal. And they used cow prods, they used shock treatments, and this is what this gentleman is doing, is they would lay them down and shock them to a point that they would be out. So, some parents got involved, because these parents, when they had a baby, it's not like today where you would go and have an ultrasound and they look at your baby inside and they could tell if there was something wrong with your baby. No, they didn't have that back then. In fact, they didn't have anything then, so you just kind of had a baby, and then you had a baby, and so all of a sudden, here you're all excited, and they come and tell you that your child is disabled. Well, in those days, that meant that you just gave your baby up. And so they just advised you to put your baby in an institution. They didn't even, say, oh, try to take it and see if you could care for it. No, it was like, if you take this baby, you're going to feel like your world is going to collapse, because you can't take care of it, and it's going to make you have a divorce and all these weird things they would say. So parents just put their kids in institutions, and lots of them agreed to do it, and lots of them, some of them felt awful, but those that didn't agree or did agree, they would just go home and tell people that their baby died. Oops. And so, these parents who had these disabled children at birth and then were told to go take their baby to these institutions, they refused to do it. They actually kept their children, and they wanted to change the system. They wanted to fight for rights for disabled people. And so there was this lady, and her name is Katie Knack. Katie Knack, she is one of the leading people in those days who was an advocate for people with disabilities. She had a child of her own that was disabled. And so she got together with these parents, and then they ended up trying to, go in and try to advocate and change these laws and change how they were treating people. And then Katie Knack got smart. She decided to take these group of people, and she was calling up the newspaper, the media, and she was asking them to follow her into those institutions. And lo and behold, it became a gruesome discovery for the world. Those people found them sitting in their feces, doing absolutely nothing, literally just like you saw those pictures of them, laying out on the chairs, doing nothing. And the media, they started putting these pictures in the, publicizing them. And all of a sudden, they started getting all this attention. Well, fortunately, for this group of people, there was a man by the name of Frank Lanterman. And Mr. Lanterman, he decided, he was appalled when he saw these pictures and saw this media stuff. So he decided to get involved. Well, the thing about him was he was a pretty popular person. He was in the government at the time, and he decided that he would get together with these parents, and he too went and saw what was going on in those institutions. And they ended up, and at that time, Ronald Reagan, who of course was one of the presidents of the United States, he, at this time, he was the governor of California. And so Mr. Lanterman went to Reagan and said, please, you've got to help us, you've got to change this. And they kept proposing this Lanterman Act to be passed. And of course it wasn't on Reagan's top to-do list, so he ended up, kept kind of putting it off and putting it off. Well, interesting enough, in 1969, they ended up passing the Lanterman Act. And he, and at this time, when they did it, they developed the regional centers, and which is getting a lot of fame these days. They had 21 regional centers in California at the time, and now they're serving over 150 disabled people. 150,000 disabled people in California today. And now today they can serve. They can work. They have computers. They can take transportation. And they ended up being able to take this transportation. And now they also are, they can work almost any job that they're given if people are there to help, train them. And nowadays people graduate even from college. And, they have proven themselves that they are people. They are just not anybody. They're just not something. And so today, believe it or not, you would think that, it's common sense that they should have rights. When we hear about different rights people should have, well, I'm going to tell you that that Lanterman Act, as you see in this picture, that it is very real today, because disabled people, their rights are being violated today as well. If you only knew that disabled people, they do not even get paid minimum wage. They also do not get their medical benefits have been being taken away, dwindled, cut at the edges. And so they can't even get some of their medication that they need. They're also taking away their right to live wherever they want to. They're not being able to live in homes that they want to live in. Now they're putting them in group homes without them having the choice of that placement. And it's because it costs the government less money to put them into a group home than to put them into living in an apartment with care, with somebody caring for them. And so you can see that today they still their rights are continuously being violated. So on January 10th of 2016, in the whole state of California, they are having a rally. They're going to Sacramento, and all of the government buildings in different cities, and they're rallying, and they're saying to shame on you, Jerry Brown, because he has not been helping pass the disability acts that are taking away their funding. And so I encourage you to help the rest of the population of the disabled to keep the promise that was made during the Lanterman Act. And that is what we have been fighting for all these years. Thank you.